My husband's family kept calling his ex the real wife. At Thanksgiving, they even set a place for her, and handed me divorce papers mid-dinner. My husband smirked. Mom thinks you should sign now. Holding back tears, I calmly took out my phone and played a voicemail that instantly exposed their sick plan. From the moment I married Mark, his family never truly accepted me. His mother, Diane, was always polite on the surface but made it clear in 1,000 little ways that I wasn't good enough for her son. His sister, Rachel, would always bring up his ex-wife, Vanessa, in conversation, always with a sigh, always with a little glance in my direction, just to make sure I knew exactly where I stood. Vanessa was perfect, according to them. She was beautiful, successful, came from good stock, Diane's words, not mine, and had been the ideal daughter-in-law. Never mind that she and Mark had been divorced for years before I even met him. Never mind that I had done everything I could to be kind to them, to win them over, to be part of their family. To them, I was temporary. A placeholder. It started small. A slip of the tongue when Diane would accidentally call me Vanessa. A laugh from Mark, as if it were just a silly mistake. A comment from Rachel about how Mom still keeps in touch with her, followed by a pointed glance at me. I ignored it at first. Maybe they just needed time to accept that Mark had moved on. Then came the bigger things. A framed wedding photo of Mark and Vanessa still on display in the living room, while not a single picture of me and Mark existed in the house. Rachel bringing up Vanessa in every conversation, no matter the topic. And then, Thanksgiving. The night they made their final move. The night they tried to erase me completely. Diane insisted on hosting Thanksgiving at her house, as always. It was a huge deal in their family, relatives flying in, a formal dinner, everything done just so. I never really felt like I belonged there, but Mark had pushed me to go. Come on, he said, giving me that easy smile. It's tradition. They're just old-fashioned. Give them time. So I went. I smiled. I played nice. I told myself, maybe this year will be different. It wasn't. The moment I walked into the dining room, I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. At the long, beautifully set table, there was a place card with Vanessa's name on it. I stared at it, my heart pounding in my ears. The table was full, every seat assigned, every name written neatly on little cards. And there, right between Diane and Mark's father, was a spot for her. A seat she would never take. A seat that should have been mine. Rachel smirked over the rim of her wine glass. Oh, don't look so surprised, she said, with a little laugh. Mom still considers her part of the family. My hands clenched at my sides. I turned to Mark, silently begging him to say something. To do something. To stand up for me. He just rubbed the back of his neck and looked away. Diane smiled at me, like nothing was wrong. We like to honor tradition, dear. Tradition. Right. I swallowed hard and forced myself to sit down, even though everything in me screamed to run. I told myself, get through dinner. Just get through dinner. Then Diane slid a manila envelope onto my plate. I frowned, staring at the envelope. What's this? Mark finally spoke. And when he did, his voice was calm. Casual. Like he was talking about the weather. Mom thinks you should sign it now. My fingers trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside were divorce papers. Already filled out. My name typed neatly at the top. Mark's signature at the bottom. My throat closed. I felt the entire room watching me, waiting. I looked at Mark. You're divorcing me? My voice came out small, almost childish. Diane sighed, like I was being difficult. Sweetheart, don't make a scene. Rachel smirked again. The aunts and uncles avoided eye contact. We just think, Diane continued, that this is for the best. For the best. Like I was some mistake that needed correcting. Like I had been tolerated long enough and it was time for things to go back to how they should be. Mark still wouldn't look at me. I felt my chest tighten, my vision blur. I was humiliated. Betrayed. But I wasn't stupid. Something was off. Why now? Why here? Why in front of everyone? And then, I remembered the voicemail. 2 nights ago, I had gotten a voicemail by accident. It was from Vanessa. She must have thought she was calling someone else, because when I listened to it, I nearly fell off the couch. And now, sitting at that table, my heart hammering in my chest, I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and pressed play. Vanessa's voice rang through the dining room. Loud. Clear. Mark, I don't care if your mom is pushing for it. I'm not getting back with you. You need to stop this. It's pathetic. I already told you, a sharp, collective gasp from the table. Diane's fork clattered against her plate. Rachel's eyes went wide. I let the message keep playing. Also, stop telling people I cheated. You and I both know you were already chasing other women while we were married. I'll be damned if I let your mom rewrite history. Silence. A silence so thick it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Mark's face drained of color. He looked like he wanted to run. Rachel slammed her glass down, her face twisting in shock and rage. Diane? Diane looked like she had seen a ghost. I put my phone down slowly. Then, I smiled. So, Mark. Want to explain that? Diane opened and closed her mouth like a fish, but no words came out. Rachel shoved her chair back, storming out of the room. Mark looked trapped. Like a man caught in his own web of lies. Babe, listen, he started. I raised a hand. I wasn't done yet. I turned to Diane. So, let me get this straight, I said, my voice trembling with anger. You planned this whole dinner just to humiliate me? You made me come here, sit at this table, just so you could shove divorce papers in my face, because you thought Vanessa would take him back? Diane flinched. Mark sank lower into his seat. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Well, congratulations. You played yourself. And then? I reached for the mashed potatoes. And dumped them straight into Mark's lap. The room erupted into chaos. And I stood up, adjusted my dress, and walked right out the door. I walked out of that house with my head held high, but inside, I was shaking. My hands were trembling as I got into my car. My heart was still racing. The mashed potatoes, the voicemail, the looks on their faces, it all felt unreal. But one thing was crystal clear, they had planned this. They had fully expected me to sit there, humiliated, accept the divorce like some obedient little wife, and quietly disappear so they could bring Vanessa back in. Only, their perfect plan had blown up in their faces. I took a deep breath and started the car. My phone was still in my lap, the screen lit up with missed calls and texts from Mark. I ignored them. But as I pulled out of the driveway, my phone rang again, an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. But something in my gut told me to answer. And when I did, I nearly slammed the brakes. Hello? I said cautiously. A woman's voice came through the line, shaky and urgent. Is this Mark's wife? My stomach twisted. Who is this? A pause. Then, my name is Olivia. And I think you need to know the truth about your husband. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. What truth? She hesitated, then exhaled. I've been seeing him. For over a year. I felt the blood drain from my face. He told me he was divorcing you. He told me it was mutual, she continued. But after what just happened, I knew he was lying. I didn't know how to reach you, but I found your number through an old email Mark left open. I couldn't breathe. Mark had another woman. A secret girlfriend. While his family was trying to push Vanessa back into his life, he had been sneaking around with someone else the entire time. Where are you right now? I asked, my voice deadly calm. I'm outside his apartment, Olivia said. He doesn't know I'm here. But I think you should come. I looked at the road ahead, then back at the house in my rearview mirror. I had a choice. I could go home, cry, pretend none of this was happening. Or, I could end this once and for all. I turned the car in the opposite direction. 20 minutes later, I pulled up outside an apartment complex I had never seen before. Olivia was waiting near the entrance, arms crossed, looking just as furious and betrayed as I felt. The moment I got out of the car, she stared at me for a long time, then shook her head. I can't believe I believed him. I gave a bitter laugh. Yeah, well. You're not the only one. She glanced up at the building. He's inside. I saw his car. I clenched my jaw. Let's go. We didn't knock. We didn't wait. Olivia had a spare key because, of course, Mark had given her one, and the second we stepped inside, the smell of his cologne hit me like a slap. And there he was. Sitting on his couch, scrolling through his phone, texting someone. Probably me. Probably her. When he looked up and saw us standing there together, his face went white. Babe, he said, looking between us. I folded my arms. Which one of us are you talking to? He opened his mouth. Closed it. His eyes darted toward the door, like he was already calculating an escape. Olivia scoffed. Don't even try it. Mark stood up slowly, running a hand through his hair. Okay, listen. This isn't what it looks like. I gave a humorless laugh. Really? Because it looks like you've been lying to both of us. And then, before he could spew whatever excuse he was about to make, his front door burst open. I spun around, just in time to see Diane and Rachel storming inside. What the hell is going on? Diane's voice was sharp, eyes blazing as she looked between all of us. Mark was still frozen, completely caught. Rachel's glare landed on me. What are you doing here? I folded my arms. Oh, just meeting my husband's mistress. Rachel's mouth fell open. Diane's face twisted in rage. That's not possible. Olivia snorted. Oh, it's very possible. Mark finally found his voice. Mom, it's not like that, Diane cut him off. I don't care about her, she snapped, jabbing a finger toward Olivia. We had a plan, Mark. A plan. And you're telling me you were sleeping with some random woman while we were trying to fix things with Vanessa? The room went silent. Rachel stared at her mother, eyes narrowing. Wait, what do you mean, we had a plan? Diane froze. Mark's entire face drained of color. And that's when I realized Rachel hadn't known. Diane had planned everything behind her own daughter's back. I tilted my head. Yeah, Rachel. Tell me, did you know your mom was trying to set Mark up with Vanessa before he was even divorced? Rachel whipped around to face Diane. You told me you weren't involved in that. Diane scoffed. I did what was necessary. Vanessa was perfect for him. I was trying to save this family from, she gestured wildly at me and Olivia, like we were dirt under her shoe. Rachel's face darkened. You lied to me. Diane's nostrils flared. Don't be dramatic. But Rachel wasn't listening anymore. She turned back to Mark, pure disgust on her face. You're pathetic, she spat. You let Mom control your entire life, and for what? A marriage that was already over? Mark stayed silent. Rachel shook her head. You know what? I'm done. I don't even care what happens to you. She turned to me, eyes filled with something almost like regret. And I'm done with this family. Then, without another word, she walked out. Diane stood there, seething. You ruined everything, she hissed at me. I smiled. No, Diane. You did that all by yourself. And then I turned to Mark. Now, about those divorce papers. Mark opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at his mother, then at Olivia, then back at me. He was trapped, and he knew it. The silence in the apartment was thick, like the moment before a storm. Then Diane, always the one to take control, let out a sharp breath and pulled herself together. She smoothed down her sweater and turned to Mark, her voice low and firm. We're leaving, she ordered. Mark hesitated, eyes flicking between me and Olivia, but he knew better than to defy his mother. He stepped forward, but I blocked the door. He blinked. Move. I smiled. No, his jaw clenched. I don't have time for this. Oh, I think you do. I pulled my phone out of my bag, tapping on the screen. Because before you walk out of here like the pathetic coward you are, you might want to see this. I turned the screen toward him, hitting play. Another voicemail. But this one wasn't from Vanessa. It was from his boss. Mark, we need to talk. I don't know how you thought you'd get away with submitting 2 separate expense reports for the same trip, but the finance team caught it. And when we looked deeper, well, let's just say you better have a damn good explanation for why company funds were used for luxury hotel stays and jewelry. The voicemail ended. The color drained from Mark's face. Diane stiffened. What is he talking about? I smirked. Oh, you didn't know? Mark's been committing fraud at work. And you want to guess what those luxury hotel stays and jewelry were for? I turned to Olivia. Her face had gone pale. You son of a... Olivia took a threatening step forward, but I held up a hand. Oh, it gets better, I said sweetly, looking back at Diane. See, Mark has multiple secret credit cards. And when I started noticing charges that didn't add up, I did a little digging. Turns out, some of those business trips he was taking? He wasn't alone. Diane spun toward her son. Mark. Tell me this isn't true. Mark said nothing. I took another step forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. And do you want to know the best part? His company is already investigating him. This voicemail? It's just a courtesy call. By this time next week, they'll have proof. Diane looked like she was going to be sick. Rachel, who had been standing silently near the door, let out a cold, bitter laugh. Oh my God, she whispered. You're a bigger idiot than I thought. Mark finally found his voice. It's not what it looks like, okay? I cut him off. I don't care what excuse you have. You tried to humiliate me, betray me, and throw me away like I was nothing. And now? You're the one who's screwed. Diane suddenly snapped. I won't let this happen, she hissed. You don't get to ruin my son's life over some mistakes. She lunged at me, but before she could get close, Olivia stepped in front of me. Try it, Olivia warned. I dare you. Diane froze, chest heaving. Rachel, shaking her head in disgust, took out her phone. You know what? I'm done. She tapped on the screen and lifted it to her ear. Mark frowned. Who are you calling? Rachel's smile was cold. The cops. Mark paled. What? No, Rachel, come on, she raised a finger, silencing him. Hi, yes, she said into the phone. I'd like to report ongoing financial fraud at company name. I have some evidence you might be interested in. Mark lunged for her phone, but Olivia and I stepped between them. I crossed my arms. You're done, Mark. His face contorted with rage. You think you've won? I raised an eyebrow. Haven't I? Diane, still standing stiffly, turned slowly to face me. Her expression was pure, icy hatred. This isn't over, she whispered. I tilted my head. Oh, Diane. I smiled. It definitely is. And as sirens began to blare in the distance, I knew this was only the beginning of their downfall. Mark was pale, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to come up with a way out of this, but there was none. Rachel was still on the phone with the authorities, her voice clear and unwavering as she reported his fraud. Diane was frozen, her hands shaking, her carefully controlled mask crumbling by the second. I could tell she was trying to figure out how to fix this, how to protect her golden boy, but there was nothing left to fix. Olivia and I stood side by side, united in the betrayal we had suffered. And then, Mark did something unbelievable. He turned to me, eyes dark with anger. This is all your fault, he hissed. I let out a hollow laugh. My fault? If you had just signed the damn papers like you were supposed to, he spat, stepping closer, his voice growing more desperate, none of this would be happening. But no, you had to come in here and ruin everything. I stared at him, almost in shock. He was serious. He actually thought that if I had just gone along with the disgusting little ambush his family had planned, he wouldn't be in this mess. No accountability. No remorse. Just pure entitlement. Diane seemed to snap out of her trance at the sound of Mark's raised voice. She rushed forward, gripping his arm. Sweetheart, we can fix this, she whispered frantically. We just need to get ahead of it, are you kidding me? Rachel interrupted, her voice sharp. She turned to their mother with a look of pure disgust. You're still trying to save him? Diane's head snapped toward her daughter. Of course. He's my son. Rachel let out a bitter laugh. Oh, yeah. And what about me? What about the rest of us? What about the fact that you just admitted you were trying to manipulate Vanessa into taking him back while he was cheating on his actual wife? Diane stiffened. Rachel wasn't done. You were so obsessed with controlling his life that you didn't even see what a disaster he actually is. Or maybe you did, but you just figured if you covered up his messes, no one would notice. Diane's lips parted like she wanted to argue, but for the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. Mark looked between them, realizing what was happening. His one true supporter, his mother, was starting to lose control of the situation. And then, in true pathetic fashion, he turned back to me. Please, he begged. You don't have to do this. I tilted my head. You mean, I don't have to ruin you? He swallowed. I made mistakes, okay? But we were good ones, weren't we? His voice softened, his eyes desperate. We could still fix this. I stared at him, feeling nothing but pity. You don't get to ask me that, I said, my voice eerily calm. Not after what you did. Not after what you tried to do to me. And then, I stepped aside, just as two police officers walked into the apartment. Mark turned, startled by the sight of the cops. "Mark, last name?" one officer asked, already reaching for his cuffs. "You're under arrest for financial fraud and embezzlement." Diane gasped. No, this is a mistake." She lunged forward, but the second officer stepped in front of her, holding up a hand. Rachel crossed her arms. "No, Mom. This is justice." Mark started panicking, twisting toward Diane. "Mom, do something." Diane looked horrified, but before she could react, Rachel let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, you mean like how she's covered for you your whole life?" Rachel sneered. "Guess what, Mark? She can't buy your way out of this one." The officers pulled out a printed warrant, showing it to him. "We have evidence of fraudulent transactions tied to your name," one of them stated. "You'll need to come with us." Mark started struggling. "No, wait, this isn't my fault." I folded my arms. "Then whose fault is it?" His eyes locked onto mine, full of rage. "Yours." The officers forced his hands behind his back, cuffing him. Diane screamed, reaching for her son. "Mark. Baby, no." But it was too late. Mark was dragged out the door, kicking and screaming, as his perfect little world came crashing down. Diane stood there, her body shaking, her perfect hair disheveled, her whole life's work ruined in minutes. Rachel just sighed and ran a hand through her hair. "Well. That was a lot." Then she turned to me. And for the first time, she looked genuinely guilty. Rachel cleared her throat. "Listen. I didn't know Mom was doing all that behind my back." She shifted uncomfortably. "And I didn't know Mark was cheating on you this whole time." I arched an eyebrow. "And that makes what you did okay?" She flinched. "No. It doesn't." I let the silence stretch. Let her sit in it. Then she sighed. "I'm sorry," she muttered. "I really am. It wasn't enough, but it was something." I nodded once, accepting it for what it was. "Good luck dealing with Diane." Rachel scoffed. "Oh, I'm done with her." She shot a glare at her mother. "You're on your own, Mom." Diane's head snapped up, stunned. Rachel just walked out, leaving Diane standing there, alone. Diane turned to me, hatred burning in her eyes. "You think you've won?" I smiled. "Haven't I?" She exhaled sharply, glaring daggers at me before stomping out the door. And just like that, I was free. I looked at Olivia, who was still standing there, arms crossed, eyes tired but satisfied. "Well," she said, blowing out a breath. "That was a disaster." I let out a small, exhausted laugh. "Yeah. But at least now, we're done with him." She nodded. Then, hesitantly, she stuck out a hand. I looked at it for a second. Then I shook it. "Drinks," she suggested. I grinned. God, yes. And as we walked out of that apartment, leaving behind the mess, the lies, and the absolute disaster of Mark's life, I realized something. For the first time in years, I finally felt free. A week later, Mark was officially charged with fraud. His company fired him, and his assets were frozen. Turns out, his financial crimes were way worse than I originally thought. Diane tried to fix it, but she couldn't. Her golden son was done for. Rachel cut off her entire family and moved across the country. She and I never became friends, but we left things on neutral terms. And Vanessa? She sent me a single text after everything went down. "I always knew he was trash. Glad you got out." And me? I took everything I was owed in the divorce. Half of his assets. The car. A chunk of his retirement fund. And then? I disappeared from their lives. Forever. Best decision I ever made.